Hi there, students. Well, tomorrow is your test for government, and I have the questions here in front of me, and I just want to spend a few minutes talking through them. We're talking about the presidency, and you want to know what are the requirements to be president of the United States? What are the formal requirements? Like how old do you have to be? How long have you been a citizen of the United States? Were you born here? Is that a requirement? Um, who chooses the president? You want to be aware of that. Do the people choose the president, or is it something other than that? Or is it a member of Congress? And no, it's that electoral college thing. So who's on the electoral college? How many people? The state of Georgia has 16 electors for the electoral college. Why 16? How did they come up with that number? Uh, um, what is what's the difference between a proportional representation in the electoral college and a winner-take-all representation in the electoral college? So how is the president elected? What are the requirements that he has? You want to know that. What if a president dies in office? Who then becomes president? Oh my goodness. What happens if the president and the vice president are given a coronavirus update and a reporter stands up and shoots both of them? What if both the president and the vice president were to die? Who becomes president? And where is that in the Constitution of the Amendments? Who determines that? What if the president is only wounded? Who becomes president? Um, does he become president forever until a special election is held? How long would Mike Pence become the president? Um, so those are some questions that you want to be able to answer. Um, of course, there are some informal requirements for being president too. Uh, and what are those informal requirements? And then we're talking about the executive branch of government. And most of those people serve at the pleasure of the president, and they can be dismissed just anytime the president chooses he's not pleased with them. In fact, President Trump has asked a lot of people to resign. So he's constantly people who are doing the job. If a president wants to establish rules and regulations for the operation of a federal agency, how does he go about doing that? What does he issue? What is that called? If who is it that has the president can make treaties just like he can nominate people to serve on his cabinet, but who has to approve it? Who has to confirm? Who has to advise and consent? Is it the Congress, or is it the House, or is it the Senate? And so, what if the president wants to make an agreement with a foreign nation, but maybe that confirming body in the Congress, whichever it is, the House or the Senate, doesn't go along with it? What can he do, if anything? Now, there have been a number of wars the United States have been in, but Korean War, not a war. Now, how about Vietnam? Not a war. Gulf War? Not a war. What wars have the United States been in? And does the president declare war? Or who declares war? You need to know that. The War Powers Act of 1973 limited the power of the president to be engaged in in a military force. And they were limited to how long? You want to know that. And anytime a new law is proposed, who writes the laws? That's the legislature. Who executes the laws? Well, that would be the executive branch, the president. And then the judicial department, they decide if the laws are constitutional. You want to know that. Um, Now, the president two, does have some legislative power. He can't pass a law, but he can recommend that laws be passed by the legislature. And there are two ways that he can do that. You need to know both of those two ways that the president can propose legislation. Um, and the presidential veto, who does that check? That's part of the checks and balances. Who does it check? Does it check Congress or does it check the judicial branch? How does he use his veto? Um, uh, and we talked a little bit, if you've done all your quizzes, you've checked your answers. Um, what role does the media play? Uh, how can the president use the media? We had two examples, the fireside chats and the bully pulpit with Teddy Roosevelt. Both of those were examples of the president using the media. And the power of the presidency. Has it grown, diminished, or stayed about the same over a period of time from George Washington up to Donald Trump? Is the power of the presidency grown, or is it, again, about the same? Um, let's see. Oh, executive office of the president. I want to ask you, what is at the heart? We can do that little heart check. What is at the heart of the executive office for the president? Who? Who? Who is at the heart of the executive office of the president? That's what I'm asking. Who? So, who? And then, when was it? When was the executive office of the president established? When was the West Wing built? And that would be good questions to ask. What does the National Security Council do? You want to know that. What does the Council of Economic Advisors do? What does the Office of Management and Budget do? How does that differ from the Council of Economic Advisors? Um, let's see. Man, I'm going right through these things. What's the cabinet? Who is on the cabinet? How about the State Department? And what are the heads of the cabinets called? All of them, there are, I think, 15 cabinet positions, and all of them are headed by a person known as, I don't remember what it is, but I bet you know. Who heads up those various cabinet posts, those cabinet departments? Who is the head of the State Department? Who is the head of the Transportation Department? Who is the head of the Education Department of Education? And so what are those people called? Now, there is one department. There were four original departments in the cabinet. They were the State Department. There was the War Department. There was the Treasury, and then there was well, it wasn't really a department. It just had a head who was the Attorney General. He now heads up the Department of Justice, which is one of the cabinet departments. But the Attorney General, he is the only one that's called the Attorney General. All other 14 have this title, and you need to know what that title is. Let's see. You had pictures in your text of John Adams. He was the first vice president. Who is the current vice president? Who is President Obama's vice president? And of course, most of those have run on the same ticket, when President Trump ran, he was selected as his vice presidential candidate, Mike Pence. When Barack Obama ran for president, he was selected as his vice president. What was that guy's name? You know. And George Washington, now when George Washington was elected president, he didn't have a vice president on the ticket with him. In fact, there weren't any tickets. It was the guy who received the most votes from the Electoral College became president. The guy who received the second most votes in the Electoral College became vice president. And who was Washington's vice president again? But you know. What are some of the duties of the vice president? Well, he serves as president if the president is shot, but he is also serving as the president right now when he is vice president. Not president of the United States, but president of what? What is he serving as president for right now? Which, yes. And let's see. Oh, and he has another important duty too. You need to know that he serves in case something happens to the president. He serves as president of something right now. And then there's a third very important duty that has to do with the Electoral College. So you definitely want to be up on that. Who heads up the White House office? Who heads up the White House office? It's the president's chief of staff. I think that's Martin Meadows right now. And so let's see if there are any skipped over that maybe you need to know. What department was created during the 1930s to advise and assist the president carrying out presidential duties? Most of the presidents, I think there's about a third of them that have this in their background. It's an informal requirement. They're not a requirement, but more or less the suggestion that presidents, those who run for president, are elected as presidents. Oftentimes, this is part of their background. It was certainly true for President Washington, and it was not true for President Adams, not true for President Jefferson, but it was true for President Eisenhower, and it was true for President Bush, William Henry Harrison. It was true of him. What is it in their background that made them important candidates for president that they ended up winning? I think the United States has been involved in 5 wars that were declared wars by Congress. That is, came up for a vote. Congress approved it, our going to war. And you want to know what 5 wars those were and kind of the wars that we have fought that weren't declared wars. I think we've kind of covered in just about 14 minutes the major things that are on the test. So if you can answer all the questions that I rambled through, you should be fine for this. You have between 11 and 1 to take the test. It's 25 multiple choice questions, and you only have 40 minutes to take the test. You can take it anytime between 11 and 1 40 minutes, but once you start, the clock is ticking. So you got 40 minutes. You will. And see you later.